This is part 5 of 5. Your board wants an AI transformation timeline. Your team is already running AI agents in production, and nobody has actually asked the one question that decides whether any of it works. Are you ready, or are you just being fast? I'm Nigel Thomas. I run Simplify Management. 20 plus years leading big, complicated projects taught me exactly how this story ends when nobody asks that question. Not with a big dramatic explosion, with a quiet, expensive stall about 6 months in, right after the budget is spent and the credibility is gone. This is part 5, the last one in our 5-part series on the problems tripping up delivery leaders. Part 1 was weak sponsorship. Part 2 was the strategy execution gap. Part 3 was communication breakdown, and part 4 was resource overload and the talent gap. Today, we close the loop with the problem moving faster than any of them. Are you actually ready for AI, or are you just running it fast? Here's the problem explained simply. Here's a quote that struck me. An executive at a major bank described what an AI rollout feels like inside his own company right now. He said it's like flying an airplane at 10,000 feet, being told to climb to 12,000 feet, and replace both engines at the same time. I've heard this quote before, and that's usually during previous technology waves where there's a transformational technology being rolled out. You're told, make sure there's zero turbulence the whole time. Nobody would agree to fly that plane. But that is exactly what a lot of companies are doing with AI right now. Here's the part that ties this whole series together. Every problem we've covered so far has actually been the same problem, wearing a different costume. An unready sponsor, an unready translation of strategy, an unready communication plan, an unready overloaded team. AI is just the fastest, most expensive version of that same story. Because machines do not wait around for you to catch up. They just keep running, whether you are ready or not. Since this is the last video in the series, let's take 15 seconds and connect the dots. Article 1 was about sponsors who sign off at the beginning, the kickoff meeting and then disappear. Article 2 was about strategy that never gets translated into what people actually do on Monday morning. Article 3 was about communication that gets sent but never actually gets understood. Article 4 was about good people getting stretched across too many projects. Because nobody was willing to cut the list. Every one of those is a readiness problem. None of them gets solved by hiring faster or buying a shinier tool. They get solved by leaders being honest about where the organization actually stands before they commit. Now, here's problem number 5, the one moving faster than all 4 of the others combined. And before we get into the numbers, I want to show you why none of this should actually surprise you. You don't have to take my word for what happens when leadership panics about a technology it doesn't fully understand yet. I've watched this play out twice already in my career, and looking back, it's genuinely funny both times. One time was cloud computing, back when the cloud was still something people said with air quotes. I was on site with the client's infrastructure team. We're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, brand new technology. Running small tests, putting a little bit of low risk work on it, like developer stuff, and figuring out what broke. And nobody was rushing because the technology itself wasn't really ready for serious mission critical work. And everybody in the room knew it. Industry knew it, and it was just being introduced. So about 6 months into that, somebody on the board read an article somewhere, maybe an HBR, maybe another business magazine, and asked the CEO 2 dangerous words: cloud strategy. The CEO called the CIO who had actually been doing the rail work, instead of branding it, gave the honest answer: we're working on it. We're working on it. Let me get back to you tomorrow. By the next morning, that had turned into, I need a cloud strategy on my desk today. We built the deck. It wasn't that hard. Once, our homework had really paid off. And once somebody asked the question directly, the hard work was actually the 6 months leading up to that. And that's really how it should be. But nobody at the top had really bothered to ask what, ready would look like. And that's what we were figuring out. The other time was spreadsheets. And honestly, this one is the closest match to what's happening with AI right now. When desktop applications at first landed on, people's desks, email, word processors were nice, but spreadsheets, once they came with macros and real scripting, they were a completely different animal. And that, kind of power to a sharp financial analyst, and something close to magic happens. Early adopters built tools that quietly ran across multiple servers and departments and stitched together from scripts that nobody in IT had laid eyes on, and doing things that official systems couldn't touch. It looked impressive because, well, actually it was. And here's the problem. here's the problem that nobody had planned for how many people would eventually depend on that spreadsheet. Nobody owned the backup. Nobody had written down what happens when one part of it doesn't work, or people don't understand it, or when it just stops, or when the person takes a vacation who is actually running it. And it works beautifully right up until it does. And then the whole department is leaning on it. And here's the part that nobody likes to admit. Those spreadsheets never actually left. They're still running today in plenty of companies, quietly doing the same jobs they always did, except now they live in the cloud instead of, on somebody's desktop, which is a little better. But they're a legacy tool in every sense of the word, and they're still standing in often badly for business functions that they should have outgrown them years ago. And sometimes even functions that are very much current and very much important. Nobody ever replaced them. And, maybe AI will do it, but everybody just got used to them. And that's the exact shape of what is happening again right now with AI, except this time, it's not one clever analyst, in your department or in another department that's scripting. It's entire teams quietly building AI-driven processes. Some of the people are now vibe coding. They're feeding Rail business logic and sometimes Rail client data into tools without a clear answer to where that data goes. Who owns it? Who owns it when it breaks, or whether anyone with a security background has looked at it at all. It took the industry roughly a decade and a half of hard negotiation to get Rail enterprise-grade data boundaries built into these agreements, with these companies maturing enough to do that. Microsoft and Google, we're doing the same negotiation now at, the same panicked speed, except the vendor list has grown to include, the big names like OpenAI, Anthropic, and a whole bunch of other vendors too. History isn't repeating by accident. It's repeating because, almost nobody read the first draft. Maybe you weren't there for this wave of spreadsheets and desktop applications or the introduction of cloud. Now, let's look at the actual numbers behind why this keeps happening. Let's start with how often AI projects actually work. Because the answer might surprise you. Researchers at RAND, a well-known research organization, interviewed people who have spent years actually building AI systems for a living. Their conclusion, by some estimates, more than 80 out of 100 AI projects fail. And this is an older study, it's about 2 years old, and this is roughly double the failure rate of regular technology projects that don't involve AI at all. That's not really odds anymore. That's a coin flip where somebody already tampered with the coin. And it's getting worse, not better, as more companies rush in. A survey of over 1,000 technology and business leaders found that the number of companies abandoning most of their AI projects, before they even reached production, jumped from 17 out of 100 one year to 42 out of 100 the very next year. And that might be a good thing, but a good thing that they got stopped. But as you'll see later on, that's probably a good thing that they got stopped, as you'll see later on. But what does that mean? That's like your gym's cancellation rate jumping from 1 out of every 6 members to almost half the building in 12 months. Something is going wrong faster than anybody is fixing it. And so Gartner, a major research firm, they back this up as well. Looking forward, they predict more than 40 out of 100 AI agent projects will be canceled, by the end of 2027 because of rising costs, unclear value, or risk. And, started Gartner again. Gartner backs this up. Looking forward, they predict more than 40 out of 100 AI agent projects will be canceled by the end of 2027 because of rising costs, unclear value, or risk controls that were never actually built. Picture ordering 40 pizzas for a party and knowing right now that 16 of them are going straight in the trash before anyone even takes a bite. That's the plan. Gartner says a lot of companies are already running. That's the plan. Gartner says a lot of these companies are running already. None of these numbers are really about the technology. They're about organizations deploying before they were ready to deploy. And that's a common theme that I've seen over and over decades. Now, let's talk about who's actually holding the bag when this goes wrong. Because, it's usually not who you'd expect. IBM surveyed 2,000 senior technology leaders, executives across 33 countries. 2 out of every 3 CIOs and CTOs, the people in charge of technology, say they're personally held accountable for AI systems that they don't fully control. That's like handing someone the keys to a car with no brakes and then being upset with them, when it doesn't stop at the light. The same research found that organizations experience an average of 54 AI-related incidents last year. 37 out of 100 of those incidents involved an actual data breach. That's basically a fire alarm going off once a week. And more than a third of the time, something really is on fire. So here's the piece that should really, really bother you if you sit anywhere near the executive table. 88 out of 100 leaders, 88% say they're under a CEO driven mandate to move fast on AI, but only 11 out of 100 say they actually feel ready for the scale of what's coming. And it's not just management. A global governance study of 700 board directors found that 2 out of every 3 boards say they still have limited to no real knowledge or experience with AI. Now, here's the twist that most leaders, they get it backwards. You'd assume the pressure to move fast comes from eager teams, on the ground, outrunning a cautious boardroom. The data says the opposite. A survey of over 600 CEOs and board members, found that 61% of them say their own boards are the ones rushing the AI transformation. And here's the part that, that's genuinely strange. The board members who understand AI the least are the ones pushing the hardest to go faster. Researchers called it board FOMO, the fear of missing out. Thinking about the one person on a camping trip who has never actually gone camping before, and insisting that the whole group keep hiking after dark because they're worried about missing something. It's scary. A separate survey of 3,700 senior leaders found 87 out of 100 believe AI will completely transform jobs at their company within the next 12 months. Only 29 out of 100 say their workforce is actually ready, to use it. Now, here's where it gets genuinely surprising, and it flips the usual story on its head. Everybody assumes the skills gap sits with the employees, and that's true to a large extent. A major study surveying over 3,600 employees and more than 200 senior executives found that leadership actually underestimates how much their own people already use AI. Leaders guessed employees use it for a small slice of their work today. The real number reported by employees was about 3 times higher. That's a parent insisting their teenager doesn't know how to use the new gaming console, while the teenager has already finished the entire game twice and started a walkthrough channel about it. That doesn't mean training isn't a real issue. It's just not where most leaders think it is. The global survey of project management professionals found over 40% have received no AI training at all. Remember that plane from the start of the video, the one getting new engines mid-flight? That's what it feels like, sending someone into a cockpit and hoping they figure out switches, while they're already in the air. Now, here's the single most important number in this entire video, because it tells you exactly what actually fixes all of this. A massive study of over 5,800 project professionals found that people who use AI tools see a 17-point jump in project success, but only when, that AI use is paired with real human skills: communication, judgment, adaptability, and leadership. Are you surprised? I'm not. I've seen it over and over. The researchers built a score out of this called the Net Project Success Score. Without any of those human skills paired with AI, that score sits at 27. With all 4 skills used consistently alongside the AI, it jumps to 94. Only 7 out of 100 professionals are actually doing all 4 today. Read that again, 27 versus 94. That's not a small improvement. That's almost an entire gap between a project that fails and one that succeeds. And the tool was exactly the same in both cases. What changed was whether the humans running it were actually ready to use it well. So here's 4 fixes made simple. All right, enough numbers. Here are 4 fixes, and none of them require you to slow your company down to a crawl. They just require you to actually check before you commit. Fix number 1, build your AI governance before you scale the rollout, not after. If 2 out of 3 CIOs are already accountable for systems they don't fully control, that's not some future risk. That's happening right now. Name a specific senior owner for AI oversight, sized to match how big the deployment actually is. Fix number 2, when pressure to move fast is coming from you, the top, treat that as a reason to slow down and check, not a reason to skip the check. The data is clear. The board members who understand AI the least are the ones pushing hardest for speed. That pressure is not evidence you're ready. Sometimes it's evidence of the opposite. Fix number 3, stop assuming your frontline is the bottleneck. The data says employees are already more ready than leadership gives them credit for. And the real trust gap sits with leadership's own execution. Point your training budget and your decision-making authority at the actual gap, not the one that's easiest to blame. Fix number 4, every single AI rollout needs real human judgment, communication, adaptability, and leadership built in on purpose, not left to chance. That 27 to 94 jump in project success didn't come from a better model. It came from people using the tool well. Build that into your project methodology directly, or you're leaving almost the entire benefit of AI on the table. None of these 4 fixes ask you to move slower for the sake of moving slower. They ask you actually know where you stand before you commit the budget and the timeline. That's the whole difference between ready and fast. So let's bring this one together. The AI readiness gap isn't a separate problem, from everything else in this series. It's the same readiness problem. It's we've been talking about through the whole series. It's just moving at a machine speed, governance that hasn't caught up, pressure that's coming from the top, not bottom, and a skills gap that actually is sitting in a different place than most leaders assume, and a tool that only pays off when real human judgment gets paired with it. There's 4 fixes. Build governance before you scale. Treat urgency as a reason to check, not to skip. Close the skills gap where it actually is, and pair every AI rollout with human behaviors that make it actually work. And read the article. Everything I just walked you through, the RAND numbers, the IBM governance data, the board research, and the full breakdown of that 2794 success score. It's written out in full in my LinkedIn article. It's called The AI Readiness Gap. And it's article number 5, the final one in my 5-part series on the biggest problems facing delivery leaders today. If you want the exact sources and the full breakdown, you can bring to your leadership team, go read it. The link is right below this video. The RAND article especially is really useful, and so is the IBM article. So I encourage you to read it if that's your thing, if you need some evidence to back you up in taking this to your leadership team and your colleagues. I'm Nigel Thomas, and I run Simplify Management. I've spent over 20 years leading big, complicated projects inside big companies. I personally lived through the disengaged sponsor, the lost strategy, the broken communication line, and the overloaded team, and now the AI rollout that moved faster than anyone's readiness to handle it. Here's the reality. The horse is already out of the barn on AI at your organization. You've got AI projects running right now. Official ones your steering committee or your board actually signed off on, and unofficial ones that nobody ever put on a slide. And it's very likely you have both. The move isn't arguing about whether that's true. It's doing a health check to find out exactly where the gaps are, and then building the plan to close them. And here's what I want you to really hear. That check isn't really a governance health check. It's a business health check. Being compliant with some framework matters, but it's secondary to the real question, which is how much business risk you're already carrying. What matters most right now is whether what's already in front of your customers has actually been tested, if it's actually been verified and has a human in the loop. And here's the good news. Your team almost certainly already knows where some of these gaps are sitting. So ask them things like this. Which AI-driven processes are already touching customer-facing systems? For anything already in production, has it been tested against real failure or just the happy path? Everywhere we say there's a human in the loop, is that human actually still there, paying attention and able to stop the process? What data is going into which AI tool, and do we actually know where it's stored and who can see it? And if one of these tools breaks or gets it wrong, finds out first, and who's actually accountable for fixing it? Working with me looks like this. We look at where your organization actually stands today, not the version that looks good in a board deck. And we find the real gaps together and then build a plan your team can actually run. If those questions raise more questions than answers, that's exactly the conversation you need to keep having. That's what I help delivery leaders and executives drive through Simplify Management. There's a link in the description. Let's talk. So that's the series, 5 problems: sponsorship, strategy, communication, capacity, and now AI. And here's the thing I want you to walk away with. Every single one of them was the same problem wearing a different costume. An organization that wasn't honest with itself about where it actually stood, before it committed the budget and the timeline. Back to that plane at 10,000 feet, ordered to climb mid-engine swap, 0 turbulence allowed. You don't fix that by flying faster. You fix it by being honest about the plane you're actually flying, before you agree to the climb. I'm Nigel Thomas. Thank you for watching this whole series. If it helps you see your own organization a little more clearly, that's exactly what it was built for. See you in the next one.